Okay, it is 10 on the dot, so we are gonna get this going here. Again, my name is Kat Necro. It's good to see everybody. I am Vice President for Advancement in Marketing and Communications at Lenoir-Rhyne. I'm joined by the Reverend Dr. Chad Rimmer, the Rector and Dean of the Seminary. And we're excited to have you here and glad you're taking advantage of this opportunity to hear about the seminary's transition to the Hickory campus. We are recording this session and we will post it to the dedicated webpage about the seminary's move, which is lr/edu LTSS-future. And I'll share that in the chat as well, just so you can bookmark that. That should be available and up tomorrow if you want to share that with anybody or if you hear anything that you want to go back to and listen to. We will have time after Chad to share some information to ask questions. This is a pretty small group, so we probably can just ask them live, but if you want to throw them in the chat, I will keep an eye on that as well. And we will go from there, I think. So without, if there are any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Chad, although he just disappeared from my screen. So I think we'll just wait a second and I'll just chat with you for one more minute until he pops back up. So very timely group of folks, so thank you for that. Oh, and there's Chad. All right. Chad, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to you then.
Great, thank you, Kat. And I hope the connection here looks a little bit unstable. I hope, but it looks like it's popping me off and back in. So if I drop off, I'm sure I'll come back in. But good morning, everybody. It is great, and thank you for joining us here. I want to, because we're a small group here, just sort of take a round and get everybody to say just a very brief word of who you are and where you're zooming in from this morning. And I do want to ask you one question, and that is that when you introduce yourself, if you want to share a word or a phrase that comes to mind when you think about Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary. I have been in the rounds, as you can imagine, talking to a lot of alumni and members of the larger seminary community, and it's always great just to hear and share the reflection.
Well, seems like Chad did get popped up there for a second. I'm going to give him a minute to come back in.
And back again.
Period.
And if you would just share one word or a phrase about that comes to mind when you think of your relationship or memories of LTSS. And anyone can get us started. I see Carolyn there. I wonder, Carolyn, if you'd be willing to get us started.
Sure, I'll be glad to. I'm Carolyn Donges, and I'm signing in or posting in from Columbia, South Carolina. And I always want to have the latest information, so that's why I'm on today, even though I'm on the advisory council, and you all keep a good open communication with us. But I always want to stay on top of things because I get asked lots of questions. I guess the word for me is gratitude. Gratitude for what the seminary has been over the years for those of us in the Columbia community in South Carolina and Southeast. More importantly, for educating, nurturing our seminarians to be pastors. And I'm just grateful for the commitment and the dedication of the seminary and for the faculty, because they are key in helping seminarians become our wonderful pastors. So thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. And then I see Phil.
Hello, I'm Phil Vickers, coming from Loudon, Tennessee. I'm an '07 graduate of LTSS. Been here about 2 years, spent most of my ministry in the Kansas City area until coming a little bit closer back to home. So when I think of the seminary, I guess the word growth comes to mind because just of how much happens in that short time you're in that very formational period. I'm not Yoda by any stretch of the imagination now, but to think of the person I was before I went to seminary compared to now, a lot's happened, and I give thanks for that. So I'm thankful for the education I received there, and just very prayerful for what will happen to it in the future.
Thank you, Phil. I see Jeannie. Oh, and you're muted. If you can find the mute button there.
Okay, there you go.
Indeed.
To say it was a shock to me, I've been away from Virginia for only 5 years, but before that, I was served on the Southern Seminary Board of Trustees back in the early 90s, and kept track of, hopefully, through information being in the Virginia Synod for so long. But my words would have to be good memories. While I was there, I got the opportunity to serve on the Eastern Cluster at that time, which was Philadelphia and Gettysburg, and to go as a lay person to go to those groups where you would have a seminary dean and a seminary president and all these wonderful people and me, but nobody ever made me feel less than or whatever. It was just wonderful, wonderful memories. And I have to admit, I was really, I thought, oh no, it's going away. Although I did have a daughter that graduated from Lenoir-Rhyne, so that, those connections are, still there, but it'd have to be good memories.
Thank you, Jeannie. I see Fred.
Yeah, Fred Schott. I'm a 1969 graduate of Southern. And I guess the word would be camaraderie. My class at the time was the largest class in the LCA. I think we had about a little over 50 men at that time, and one woman in my class. And I just a lot of good time in the classroom, but a lot of good time just hanging out on the steps between classes, doing all kinds of things that had very little to do with theology. And I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you, Fred. I see also John.
There are two of us actually here. I'm John Setzler. I'm a classmate of Fred Schott's, class of 69. And then I came back to be the pastor at Ascension through the 70s. So I both saw Southern from the classroom perspective, and I saw Southern as the pastor of a number of faculty and students and watched the development. We used to sit out on the porch there at Ascension on the summer evenings and listen to budding seminarians walking the block conjugating Greek for summer Greek programs. So my words, somebody's gratitude, I would use foundation. I'm privileged to have a number of degrees after Southern, but Southern laid the foundation for my whole theological education and output. So you've got a younger graduate here. We're sitting at Colony Lutheran Church in Newberry right now.
Hi, my name is Melissa Chappelle, and I graduated in 1996. And the image, I have more of an image that comes to mind when I think of Southern. I have a bird that's nesting over one of my floodlights in my carport, and that she's had some fledglings, and that bird is kind of an image for me of Southern, of kind of a protective image, but yet preparing those fledglings for flight, ultimately out into the world. And I saw that recently. I saw those fledglings take flight, and they were everywhere. They didn't know where they were going or what they were going to do, and I kind of thought about us as graduates, how we might have been and how we might have felt inside, when we graduated and were going on our first calls. And my first call was in Chilhowie, Virginia, in the southwestern mountains of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my image for Southern Seminary. and I love it dearly.
That
I have
is
deep
wonderful.
love for the place.
That is wonderful. In the image of fledgling and taking flight and not being sure where we're going. I really love this. I also see Jacob, who's here. Might just be listening in, but just to give a minute, Jacob, if you want to say a word of greeting to the group.
Sure, thank you. My name is Jacob Gorlick. I'm a student there currently and from Columbia, South Carolina. And my word would probably be culture. I would say that the staff and faculty, as well as the students there, all are very kind and helpful and willing to pitch in, even if that isn't maybe their assigned area. So that's something that I hope is maintained as the seminary makes its move to Hickory.
And back in. Thank you, Jacob. Again, it's I'm getting a low bandwidth message here. Apologies for that, but I'll keep popping back in. Thank you, Jacob, and welcome, Pastor Appel. We're just introducing ourselves and saying a word that comes to mind when we think about LTSS, if you would like, but also if you want to take a minute just to jump in.
Good morning, all. Community is what first came to mind.
You are welcome. Thank you. And we also have Reverend Millie Scott, who's here as our admissions at LTSS. Millie, if you are, I know you're listening in, but if you would like to introduce yourself as well.
Hi, Dr. Rammer. Glad to see you and fellow alumni. I don't know, still struggling with that singular versus plural. But just glad to be in your presence, either virtually this morning. My name is Millie Scott, short for Lillian. Also on admissions staff here, but I also graduated from the Master of Divinity program in 2022 in December. So I feel very blessed to be involved with Lutheran Theological Southern Seminary. The word that comes to mind would be legacy, because that was the path in which, I became enrolled at the seminary. It's been in the family for several generations. And so I'm thankful to be a part of my family legacy that involved me with the seminary, but also the way it's being stewarded as a seminary, as a university, to continue this great tradition of theological education. I feel very, very fortunate to be involved in the process, and I'm very proud as to how we are transitioning into the future. And so I look forward to this adventure as a staff member and also fellow alum.
Thank you.
I'll just sit tight till Chad pops back in. I'm not sure what is up with this Wi-Fi, but
Yes, okay. Apologies again. Are you able to hear me now?
yes.
Okay, great. Apologies again. There's low bandwidth here in the building. So just a brief word, even biographically, about myself. As I'm serving as rector and dean now, but just to say too that while I attended seminary in Gettysburg and did my graduate studies abroad, I've got deep ties with LTSS. My uncle, grandfather, great-grandfather, and dozens who attended both LTSS and Lenoir-Rhyne University over the years. And I'm happy to say that it was interesting as I put together the history too, that my grandfather was in the first class or my great grandfather was in the first class that opened the campus in Columbia in 1911. And so there have been 5 generations of my family attending, stewarding LTSS, and after serving in churches around the globe and working with the Global Lutheran World Federation in our programs of higher education with our seminaries around the Lutheran Church, it's a joy to be called back to serve as rector and dean and teaching professor at LTSS at this time. And of course, after I arrived shortly, then the Board of Trustees took this action, looking at some of the trends and making this decision to move the seminary to the Hickory campus. And I just want to say a brief word about that. Eyes on the larger trends of higher education. And so as we look at some of those trends in higher education across the country in this past year, there have been almost 150 mergers or closures. And this is at the college and university level. I think to keep our eyes on these larger trends that are affecting higher education, to realize that these trends have been in place for a long time in terms of sustainability of higher ed institutions. So LTSS is not alone, but that's part of the gift in this moment, that LTSS is not alone. We're part of the Lutheran University and part of this great Lutheran tradition. And so what that has allowed us to do is to navigate these times. And the Board of Trustees has taken this action, which is a bold move to actually secure the mission of the seminary so that we can keep fulfilling this mission to teach
When Chad pops back in, I'm going to suggest he turn his video off because sometimes that helps. Chad, you might want to try, turn your video off.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. All right. Well, apologies again, friends. But I hope you heard a bit of that. I won't repeat it, but just to let you know that I wanted to share, to get us into this conversation, the one word that I wanted to share actually comes from one of our faculty in a recent discussion with the Advisory Council. Dr. Melanie Dobson, who's teaching in our United Methodist Studies program. She actually used the word scrappy, and I love this because in the history of LTSS, after being founded in 1830, of course, has moved in different places across South Carolina and was in Virginia for a time. And in the face of a lot of those forces that really caused a lot of difficulties for the seminary across the years, including financial difficulties, including the death of certain faculty members that caused us to close for a year, and even in the midst of war in the country. LTSS has found a way to continue its mission. And now being embedded in a Lutheran university, we can continue in this tradition of higher education that's really at the heart of the Lutheran tradition. And so just to continue, while there is a certain level of grief, of course, at taking our leave from a special place where the seminary has been since 1911, it's really a joy to be embedded as a graduate school of Lenoir-Rhyne University and have this opportunity to not only continue the mission of the seminary, but to really broaden the mission and expand our capacity in our programs for training our leaders for public ministry in the future. So I'll be happy to say more about that and answer questions that you might have. But that's by way of just giving a quick update in terms of how we have continued in this process up to this point. Again, as Kat mentioned at the top, you can follow the updates on the webpage, which is dedicated to the transition and the future of LTSS in Hickory. There I've got a few video updates that can give more details. But just to let you know that since Alumni Day, which was a great turnout, and it was a wonderful time to both share stories and have a session like this to answer questions, we have begun to get into the granular level, some of the issues around the transition. And being able to attend to some of those issues with students and faculty, but also to begin to have the conversations of how it's going to take shape for the seminary to be physically present on the Hickory campus. We've had conversations about the space where the seminary will be, about the shape of worship life, and of course all the other aspects of integrating into the campus, including Are you able to hear me again?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Yes, okay. So along with our colleagues here on the Hickory campus, we've begun to really give flesh and aspects of the move and being embedded here on the Hickory look like, or any questions that you might have. We wanted to offer this space, and so I'd love to open this up just to your questions and be able to address those at this time too. So we'll have an open floor. You can feel free to use the hands uh, uh, on Zoom, if I'm in that, happy to take any questions.
Chad, while folks are thinking, I might ask one that I know is often asked, which is if we know exactly where we're going to go on campus.
There is a discussion about a couple different options, and the faculty is going to look, and final decisions haven't a building on campus or a physical presence where the seminary will be, that everybody will be able to come, where the faculty offices will be, and the seminary offices as well. So we haven't quite identified exactly where that will be, but we've been up to take a look and have a couple choices.
Chad, do you want to run up to my office at 202 and sit here? Chad, can you hear us?
Yes, and I see Pastor Appel.
I don't know if you're going to move or stay where you are.
Yeah, Chad, I was going to suggest, do you want to just run into my office and you can just sit at my station? I'm going to suggest that he do that via text on.
Sorry, Pastor Appel, I was cut off again. Can you?
Chad, would you like to come to my office at 202 Minji's?
I can do that.
Okay, that might be easier for you because it's all working up here.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, Pastor Pell, do you want to take another try?
Yeah,
To
I
ask the
didn't.
question, see if I can hear it this time.
I didn't ask because I was waiting to see if you were. I guess
Okay.
I don't know if I've heard an explanation for the timing of doing it, moving in December, moving in the middle of an academic year, knowing that there'll be students, who will then be on campus in Columbia and having to move mid-year up to Hickory. I just wondered what both the thinking was behind that and the plans for how to help make that, and for faculty, of course, to make that a smooth transition for faculty and staff and students. But I know there's at least one seminary student from St. John's that will be a returning senior. And just the complications that's made for them and their family as they try to think about not only coming back for their senior year, but then moving potentially mid-year.
Yes, that's a great question. And I can give an answer for the reason and also an answer with respect to where or how we're going to be mitigating that reality. The reason has to do with actually accreditation, and there is a timeline that you would need in terms of decisions and reporting. Such substantive, well, it's changes in program like this, and so this is the reason for the timing, because we're actually on an accreditation calendar that we have to respect and respond to, both the SACS accreditation for the university and the Association of Theological Schools, which is the second accrediting body for LTSS. So we are constrained by that reality. Now, because of those accreditation processes too, we have a plan. It's called a teach out plan normally, but what students will have are 4 options in order to mitigate that reality of moving in the middle of an academic year. So what we will do is students will have the option. The first one will be to actually come straight to Hickory in the fall, which means they'll be online in the fall semester. And then, of course, we all catch up and we're in person in the spring semester. The second option is to come straight to Columbia and stay there all year, which means in person in the fall and then online in the spring. You see, it's a mirror image. And then the other option is to make the move for those that are in their first year going to second year. This will be particularly the ones who that would suit, is to be present in the fall in Columbia and then make the move in January to Hickory. And then, of course, we have an online opportunity through our Connect students. So the idea there is that in a transition such as this, we make it, we provide all of the options, so that it mitigates that change, with a particular eye, as you've said, on interns that are coming back who would have to move twice. So everybody has an option to not do that, and they can make their choice. And we have the logistics in place to handle all 4 of those options. It's a great question.
Thank you, Dr. Rimmer. Yeah, and I missed, unfortunately, Alumni Day, so I'm sure some of this was asked and shared, but I couldn't get down to Columbia, so thank you.
I'm happy to keep answering questions over and over again. Yes, and any others?
Yes, Adam Carnell from Emmanuel Lutheran in West Columbia, South Carolina. Was just wondering if the spiritual direction program is still going to continue. I have a congregation member that's discerning something along those lines, and obviously having a seminary moving from the Columbia area is not great for her personally, but of course recognize the reasons of that. But she was wondering and asked if I would make that question known to somebody, if that is still going to be an option, or if it's going to be based online or in person in Hickory, or just going away.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking it. And that's a way to say that all of the programs, including those that we offer in lifelong learning, are going to continue. Programs like public safety chaplaincy, as well as spiritual direction. These are all going to continue. As always, part of that program is, part of the in-person gathering, and that will be in Hickory, starting next year with the next cohort for the program. But in terms of that, we draw people from beyond the central South Carolina area as well. So now, people have been coming to Columbia to commute in for the residential part of that spiritual direction program in particular. So now it just sort of shifts as a mirror image, right? But it will continue in the same format. We'll continue to offer them. It's important to note that there will be actually a pause in the spiritual direction program, but that actually has to do with the teaching rotation. That's not because of the move, and it just so happened to map on. But there will be a next cohort, so please, Adam, let them know that we are happy to keep that program continued and look forward to everybody's participation in the future.
Thanks.
I have another question if nobody else does. What have the conversations been like with current LR faculty about making, certain courses or electives available to seminary students that would maybe traditionally be either, undergrad or even master's level work that could still enhance ministry? I know, like with Capital and Trinity, and even a while back there were conversations between Valparaiso and LSTC around, how to further enhance the seminary formation when you're now more partnered with a university that has a more breadth of courses available. Have those conversations been happening? And if so, what might that look like for continued formation in a different way because of the even closer partnership with LR and its faculty?
Absolutely. It's a great question. In a couple of layers of responses, actually. One that's unrelated to the move that was already in motion and is already taken shape, that in our new curriculum, we have what's called Explore courses, which are shorter course offerings in these areas of ministry that are special topics for formation that aren't covered in the sort of general curriculum. These are called Explore courses, and they are offered for anyone to audit and participate in the courses as well. So we've launched them specifically to alumni, but we have a great interest in expanding that and making sure that churches and synods across the region, and of course across the country as well, know that these are open for people to take as auditors. Those, of course, are could be used as continuing education credits. So those are the Explore courses, and those will definitely continue, especially because we have this online modality, that we can bring in alumni and people up for continuing education. Specifically, I'd like to have an eye on first call theological education, and those that are working in some of those areas to continue their formation. But also then in the area of lifelong learning, Adam was asking about spiritual direction certification specifically, but in the way that we engage with SAMs, with lay ministry, with different synods, we have this ongoing conversation under our Director of Lifelong Learning, Dr. Beverly Wallace, about ways to continue to hold and host some of those formation events. So we go out often to Okay. And of course now, we will just continue that on the Hickory campus. But with respect to the curriculum itself, we do have concentrations in leadership, in biblical studies, and in sustainability, which are concentrations in the existing curriculum. And what this means to be on the Hickory campus now is to just be further embedded, and to be closer to our Okay. And apologies, friends. But what this means now is to be further embedded, and be able to be working with our colleagues across the other colleges to make these sort of interdisciplinary approaches to theological education, even more a reality. And in addition, to that, a lot of the events, that are here on campus in different areas, in culture and the arts, and a lot of the things that are hosted here on the Hickory campus, the seminary can be present and engage in hosting a lot of those conversations, which is going to be a great benefit to the
Questions about. I'm hearing a lot of questions from folks who are alumni, who are big supporters of the seminary, asking questions about would there be opportunities for them to have input into certain aspects of the move or in the transition? Would there be opportunities for public to have input, especially when we're looking at some physical things at the seminary, artifacts, files, documents, property, things like that.
So any other questions?
I'm not hearing any. What I can suggest is if you have additional ones, you can always email me or Chad. There's also a form on the website where you can submit questions, and those come to me and Chad also. So either way, they will end up with us. We will process this recording and post it to the website so you can see it, or if you missed parts of what Chad said, they'll be there. And I can say that we are, Chad, if you want to maybe talk about the plans for a decommissioning ceremony, just because I think that is something that has come up from folks as well.
Indeed. Thank you, Kat. And I think this is just to say a word about this, that one of the metaphors that I'm using for this transition is one of pilgrimage. It's one that we've been talking about with the advisory council, with the alumni board, and it's one that is deeply meaningful, I think, especially for people of faith. Thinking about pilgrimage, implies that we have a history, we have a future, and God is going ahead of us and always bringing us into a new becoming. So we continue the same mission, but we'll be on this pilgrimage and physically from Columbia to Hickory. And so what we will do is one of those tables that I was speaking about in response
Well, I think what Chad would say is that there is a table that will talk about sort of this transition. But we do plan on a ceremony. Although the details are very sketchy at this point, because it's a few months out, probably looking at, I believe it's a Wednesday, November 20th. Or yes, whatever that Wednesday of that week is, I believe it's the 20th. For sort of a chapel service and then a reception of sorts. Not sure about what time that will be, whether it'll be in the afternoon or the evening. But all alumni and friends of the seminary will be invited to that, and we will receive email information about that a little bit closer to probably, beginning in the fall semester. But if you want to note that, you are in fact the first group to hear that date, so you can have some inside information for bearing with us in the technical problems today. I don't think Chad has popped back in. So
Yes, it just did.
He is there. Okay, great.
Kat, I was just going to ask you real quick.
Yeah.
You said the website. Give us that website again, if you can.
It's lr.edu and then /LTSS-future, FUTURE. And everything about the transition, this date for the closing ceremony, all that stuff, this cloud recording will all be posted there. So it's a great spot to look.
And we can share that, of course.
Of course,
right?
yeah, please share it far and wide. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Of course, yes. Well, I want to thank you all for joining today and for bearing with us with the Wi-Fi issues that Chad experienced. I know it's frustrating for him and for you all. So thank you for showing us the grace on that one. And we will keep moving forward on this exciting path and watch for more information over the next few weeks and months. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.